Greetings to the Closer to Truth community worldwide. I'm Robert Lawrence Kuhn. Many of you know me as the creator and host of Closer to Truth. Today, in appreciation of your support, I want to tell you about a scientific paper I published recently on consciousness. Consciousness, of course, is a core topic of Closer to Truth and something I have focused on a great deal in my life. As you know, Closer to Truth features leading scientists and philosophers discussing fundamental questions of existence and sentience. Closer to Truth is broadcast on PBS TV stations in the U.S., and its extensive web resources stream globally. Doing Closer to Truth has been my life privilege, immersing in cosmos life, consciousness, and meaning, working with Closer to Truth co-creator and producer-director Peter Getzels. To me, consciousness always has been and continues to be special. Special because it is a key to the human condition and just perhaps a clue to the mystery of ultimate reality. Consciousness is the classic mind-body problem. How do the felt experiences in our minds relate to the neural experiences, the neural processes in our brains? How do the experiences in our minds, what we see and feel, relate to what's happening in our brains? How do mental states, whether they're sensory, visual, auditory, whatever, cognitive, how we think, emotional, how we feel, or even just pure awareness, say in the meditative state, how do those correlate with brain states? Now, key are what's called qualia, our first-person internal experience, what's called technically phenomenological experience. That's what we're talking about, phenomenological consciousness. What is that? It's the parental sight of your newborn daughter all bundled up. It's the glorious sound of Mahler's Second Symphony, the choral finale. It's the pungent smell of garlic simmering in olive oil. So these are qualia, the felt qualities of inner experience, and they're the crux of the mind-body problem. David Chalmers, who we feature a great deal on Closer to Truth, famously labels this problem of explaining qualia, this inner feeling, as the hard problem. Now, recently, as I've said, I published a comprehensive scientific paper on diverse theories of consciousness or explanations of consciousness, why consciousness happens. And in it, I describe more than 200 theories of consciousness. It's quite amazing that there are so many theories of consciousness, whereas almost any other biological or even physical or chemical systems have different theories to explain them sometimes in the early days, but never 200 different ones. Now, the scientific paper is called, here's the name, A Landscape of Consciousness Toward a Taxonomy of Explanations and Implications. Now, here's how I begin the paper. Explanations of consciousness abound, and the radical diversity of theories is telling. Explanations, or theories, are said to work at astonishingly divergent orders of magnitude and putative realms of existence. Now, what does this mean? For example, some say the locus of consciousness is situated only at the microscopic levels of quantum-based subcellular organelles that's inside of cells, whereas others say that consciousness is situated only at macroscopic levels of whole brain neurobiological circuits or electromagnetic fields and other possibilities. You have this vast difference of orders of magnitude between subcellular quantum activities and whole brain activities, which are measured in centimeters or inches or cubic volume. Enormous differences. Moreover, some say that consciousness is purely physical, a kind of accidental adaptation selected by evolution. Now, accidental doesn't mean that it was just totally random. It just meant there was no necessity to bring about consciousness in the evolutionary flow. Maybe as Stephen Jay Gould once said, if you ran the movie of evolution again, it would have a totally different structure and different ways. Others say that consciousness is the only fundamental thing in all reality. It's the wellspring from which the entire physical world, brains included, emerges. So here you have this radical different realms of reality, purely physical, a non-necessary product of evolution, versus consciousness being all there is, and the physical world is derived from consciousness, or even the physical world is an illusion, as some extreme views would take it. And then, of course, you have many theories in the middle that kind of blend the two. Now, I have three primary purposes for the full paper, A Landscape of Consciousness. Here they are. First, number one, gather all the diverse major theories of consciousness in one place. The second point, number two, is to organize all these diverse major theories of consciousness into specific categories and an overall, what I call a taxonomy, a structure. And this provides an organizing framework for understanding how all the theories interrelate with each other, how they compare, how they contrast, the different kinds of theories, and how they work together. So the third purpose is to assess the implications of all these diverse theories of consciousness. And I picked four big questions. These are closer to truth kinds of questions. These are the core questions that Closer to Truth loves to ask about the nature of mind or consciousness. So here they are, the four big questions. The first is meaning, purpose, or value. What is the meaning of life? Second is artificial intelligence, AI consciousness. Can AI become consciousness, which is obviously a hot topic in today's world due to the large language modules, ChatGPT, and various other incarnations of it constantly improving. Third big question is virtual immortality. Now that means the idea that our mental selves, our first-person inner awareness, can be uploaded to non-biological mediums in a computer or a silicon. So when our bodies die, our consciousness, our personality, our the essence of our being can survive. Now that's controversial, but I deal with that very strongly. Virtual immortality, which some, like in Silicon Valley, I call them techno-optimists, believe is attainable through engineering. Doesn't need any new kind of physics. So my view is that and all these major topics are related to theories of consciousness. They cannot be assessed independently just because you have an idea and you hope it's true. And the fourth big question is life after death. Is personal mental survival beyond bodily physical death possible? And once again, of these big questions, my view is, which I'll explain, that you cannot address these questions in isolation or by hope. You can only address them in the context of different theories of consciousness. Different theories will come up with different answers. My central thesis of A Landscape of Consciousness are twofold, two basic ideas. One, understand consciousness at this point in human development cannot be limited to selected ways of thinking or knowing. So understanding consciousness right now, we cannot limit our ways to approach it, but we should seek expansive yet rational diversity. That's point one. Don't limit your thinking about consciousness. That's controversial. Some people think you should limit it just to the physical world. Two, critical issues related to consciousness, as I've been mentioning, which I've discussed, meaning, purpose, value, AI consciousness, virtual immortality, life after death. These cannot be understood except in the light of particular theories of consciousness, each of which will give a different kind of answer. There may be similar kinds of answers, but there's different shades of meaning and different shades of expectation about these big questions based on the different theories of consciousness. Now, the theories of consciousness, some of them are very similar to each other, but they all have subtle differences. That's why there are more than 200 of them. People think that their idea is the right idea. Nobody's going to put out a theory if they think some other theory is better, right? They're only going to put out a theory that they think is, and they feel passionate about it. And, when I did the paper, I worked on each theory of consciousness as if it were the only right idea and it was my idea. So I tried to explain each theory of consciousness as if it indeed were the truth and it was my belief. Now, it wasn't my belief and unlikely to be true, but I wanted to present it in the best possible way. That's why each theory of consciousness is you need to understand these big questions: meaning of value, purpose of life, AI consciousness, virtual immortality, even life after death. All right, let me tell you now the backstory of the paper, A Landscape of Consciousness, because truly it's the work of my lifetime. As a young teenager, I wanted to understand reality. And so I thought maybe I should be an astronomer at the time. Cosmology was not as used frequently, but that's what I meant. Or a physicist or a philosopher. I was also interested in theology, although I didn't want to become a theologian. And I was interested in parapsychology as well. So all these different ways of trying to discern reality. It was, granted, it was a flight of naive teenage imagination. It was an exhilarating experience, though, it's kind of overwhelming and sobering. It was like a simulation of what I might do to understand, what it's all about. Many people go through that phase, and my situation is I never got out of that phase. Most people do. And at that time, I remember so well that suddenly I had a realization, and it's one of the kind of my life experiences that I remember so well. I mean, it was a very vivid memory, and that's when I realized that with all these different ways of understanding reality, physics, astronomy, philosophy, it's only via our personal consciousness that we can know anything. And it's also via our brain, our physical brain, that we can sense, that we can think, that we can feel anything. And so all these other categories are products of our brain and our minds. Maybe they're the same thing, maybe they're not. Whatever it is, whatever we think about the nature of the world comes from our brains and minds. Now, in the paper, I use some closer to truth discussions as resources for A Landscape of Consciousness. Now, this is a little unusual in a scientific paper. Scientific paper, you only normally quote other scientific papers. But I include some personal observations that we have from closer to truth. Now, why do I do that? Because I want to give feel and flavor, as well as proposition and argument, for the astoundingly diverse attitudes and approaches to consciousness coming from radically diverse perspectives and worldviews. In A Landscape of Consciousness, I present these diverse theories of consciousness. Now, they range from a materialist, physicalist point of view to a non-materialist, non-physicalist point of view. And I organize these theories into 10 categories. So these are materialistic theories. They're all physical theories, but they're very different in their characterizations. So the first are what I call philosophical theories, then neurobiological, which of course is a big one, electromagnetic field theories, computational and informational, homeostatic and affective, that has to do with emotions and bodily conditions, and then embodied and inactive, which is different, which is a very kind of more modern approach to the nature of embodiment being important for consciousness, and inactive, meaning that there's a relationship between mind and life itself, not just the obvious one, but a deeper connection. And then theories that are relational and representational, how the brain works to represent different characteristics, whether it's on a simple single level or higher order level, very complicated approaches. And then language, relationships with consciousness, and what I call phylogenetic evolutionary, that you need to understand. Now, evolution would apply to all of it, but there are some theories that have a very strong evolutionary basis. Now, each is explained in detail and expressed in many specific theories in my Landscape of Consciousness article. That's the big article. So each of the categories I mentioned are the descriptions, but they're not the theories themselves. I'm not mentioning any of the theories themselves because there are too many, but under each of these categories, there might be anywhere from, 6, 7 to 20 different specific theories, all of which believe that their theory is the right one to explain consciousness. Now, the second category, remember, the first big category was materialist theories. And then there are a lot of subcategories under that, and then specific theories under it. So materialism theories actually has 3 levels. The big category, materialism. So the second category is what's called non-reductive physicalism. I'm just going to list these names. I'm not going to describe them. And then categories 3 through 10, quantum theories, integrated information theory, panpsychisms, where all fundamental particles have some proto-consciousness of some kind, monisms, where there's only one thing and it has physical and non-physical or mental and physical kind of expressions. Dualism is obvious. That's a very popular one, obviously, from religious points of view. Most major religions are dualist. There's a physical world and a non-physical world. Idealisms, where only the consciousness exists. There's only one thing, and it's pure consciousness. And then I have a category called anomalous and altered states theories. These are theories that, as its basic fundamental ontology, what it's all about in terms of its nature, are similar to the ones I just listed, but they come from knowledge or information that's derived from specific kinds of knowledge that people believe. Out of the body experiences, near-death experiences, psychic, paranormal, parapsychology, psychedelics as a window to ultimate reality, meditation. These are altered states, and each of them have different expressions that lead to theories of consciousness. So it's a little different. These are not theories of consciousness themselves, but rather vehicles to get closer to the actual theories. And then I have a final category I call challenge theories, which are many people who really challenge the whole consciousness, explanation of consciousness enterprise. It's very difficult, if not impossible. And as I've said, why are there more theories in materialism theories than in any of the non-materialism theories? It's roughly half and half. In other words, roughly of the more than 200 theories, roughly half are materialism theories in these 3 levels, and about half, a little more than 200, are in everything else. And the reason, if you think about it, is this: if you have a theory that's not physical, that has some part of it or all of it that's not physical, what can you do when you have that theory? I mean, how can you make progress? Because if it's non-physical, it's not subject to the same kind of scientific methodology of observation or experimentation, replicability, falsification. These classic scientific method approaches can't be used in the same way. Now, you can have logical thinking about anything like non-physical theories, but you can't really have a scientific method. So once you have your non-physical theory, you're kind of stuck. I mean, there you are. You have it, you say it, you believe it, but it's hard to make progress beyond on that. That's why there are more physical theories, more materialism theories. As I said, more than 100 in Landscape of Consciousness. Because if you have a physical theory and you believe that is the only way to explain consciousness, you can make progress. You can have ideas how you can show that that theory is correct using the scientific method. So that gives you more opportunity to do things. Doesn't mean that's right, that you're on the right path, but you can do more things. That's why there are more specific theories in the one category of materialism theories than in any of the other categories, almost the same as all the other categories put together. I immerse in each of these more than 200 theories in a landscape of consciousness, presenting each as if it were my own. Each theory is self-described by its founder or adherents. I try not to put my own opinion into them. My critique is minimal and only for clarification, and I make no attempt to adjudicate, to decide among the different theories. That's the point of this paper. I note in Landscape that my purpose for this paper must be humble, to collect and categorize, not assess and adjudicate, seek insights, not answers. Unrealistically, as I've said, I'd like to gather all the theories, at least all contemporary theories that are sufficiently distinct with explanations that can get over an arbitrary hurdle of rationality or conceivability. Scientific ideas of falsification or verification is not here on the agenda. That's not the purpose of the landscape of consciousness. I'm less concerned about the deep truth, what we call the ontological truth of theories or explanation, than in identifying them and then locating them on a landscape to enable a categorization and to assess their relationship. Now, note that I call it a landscape of consciousness, not the landscape of consciousness, which would seem more natural, because there's nothing magical about my framework. It is just an attempt to give it structure, but there's nothing fundamental about it that I claim. Thus, landscape is not about how consciousness is measured or evolved or even how it works, but about what consciousness is and what difference it makes by the different activities. You can get an overall panoramic sense of the entire landscape of consciousness broadly in one page. It's in figure 3. It's a graphic created by Alex Gomez-Marin. And you can see in that graphic, the materialism theories with its 10 subcategories are in the top half of the figure. And all the other big categories, 2 through 10, are in the bottom half. And those are largely non-materialism theories in one way or another. To see the complete list of all the major theories, all 200 or so, by category, you can scan through the long list of theories in figure 2, which is many, many pages, I think 5. As noted, a landscape of consciousness begins as the classic mind-body problem. Although there are families of mind-body problems, not just one, I focus tightly on what I've called phenomenal consciousness, our inner awareness, what it feels like to be something. I avoid other areas which are adjacent to phenomenal consciousness, which sometimes people put as part of consciousness, like perception, cognition, emotion as per se emotion, subconscious, nature of the self, decision-making. All of these are parts of consciousness, but each of which is a philosophical, scientific jungle of its own. Because landscape is structured by theories of consciousness, not by philosophical questions or psychological questions or neurological questions. Each theory sets its own agenda for dealing with phenomenal consciousness. Now, the landscape theories or explanations that I've described that I want to draw on this landscape are as broad as possible, including those, maybe controversially, that cannot be subsumed by or even possibly not even accessed by the scientific method. Now, this freedom from constraint, as it were, is not an excuse for woolly thinking. Standards of rationality and clarity of argument must be maintained in non-physical theories even more tenaciously, and basis of beliefs, whether it's based on near-death experiences or religious beliefs, they must be specified even more clearly so the reader knows what is the sort of the foundation of that theory. Of all these theories, some of them overlap, some work together, and a real world landscape of consciousness, even simplified, would be drawn with at least 3 dimensions, with multiple kinds and levels of nestings and combinations. I call it a combinatorial explosion, and likely no closer to truth. So I satisfice. It's with a one-dimensional, it's like a toy model. I arrange all the theories on a linear spectrum simplistically and roughly, from the most physical on the left, the material theories at the beginning, materialist theories or physicalist theories, to the least physical on the right, which would be idealism, which everything is consciousness. And then I mentioned these 2 final categories of anomalous experiences or altered states, and people who challenge it. So figures 2 and 3 provide an overall outline. So you can scan literally in seconds and see the scope of a landscape of consciousness just from figures 2 and 3. Now, what is it about the physicalism that's assumed in materialistic theories of consciousness? It's characterized by a naturalistic, science-based perspective, while non-physical or non-materialism theories have various degrees of non-physical perspectives which are outside the ambit of current science. And there's some gray area there, because I say current science. There might be a future science that embeds some of what are now non-physical theories. I certainly respect that. And, some physical theories, some non-physical theories that would be classified as non-physical today might in the future be classified as physical theories. Famously, Galen Strawson, a Closer to Truth contributor and friend, characterized real materialism as embedding panpsychism, because that would be a true materialist view. Now, that is quite idiosyncratic, but it's a very interesting view, and it highlights this point about the structure of landscape is based on current scientific thinking, because some of it is not subject to the scientific method of experimentation, replication, falsification, as I've said. So please, if you go through the landscape, please don't assume that the relative importance of a theory is proportional to the relative size of its description. Some of the shorter theories can be the stronger theories. It sometimes takes more words to describe lesser known theories. For each description, I feel this tension between wanting to be concise and wanting to be complete. Moreover, several are not complete theories in themselves, as I've said, like about parapsychological information, if any of that be true, but ways to think about consciousness. And I look for different theories that just strike me as original and perhaps insightful. I've appreciated the many readers and the participants in Landscape of Consciousness who have written in response. So as we learn more, we're getting more theories, whereas in science, it should be the opposite. The more you learn, the more you should narrow your theories. You start with a lot, but scientific approach, you falsify and you get narrower and narrower. And here, the more we have science, the more theories we have. So that's to me very telling. That's the way I began the paper, as you remember. Now, I've said about consciousness something akin to what I've said about varieties of religion, with tongue only partially in cheek. And I've said this: it's not that we have too many theories, it's that we have one too few, which means we don't know yet. In his influential paper, What Is It Like to Be a Bat?, the philosopher Thomas Nagel offers wisdom. He says, without consciousness, the mind-body problem would be much less interesting. With consciousness, it seems hopeless. Hopeless to me is invigorating. I'm up for a hopeless challenge. That's what Closer to Truth is all about. So please take A Landscape of Consciousness as my personal journey of consciousness. It's idiosyncratic, to be sure. It's not everything is for everyone, and it's certainly not set in cement. Now, here's what led to my writing the paper, A Landscape of Consciousness. The journal, Progress in Biophysics and Molecular Biology, invited me to write an article on consciousness broadly, an overview of the topic and the state of the field. Now, in my first draft, which was sent for peer review, I included, along with all the hard science, philosophical and theological explanations. Complex philosophical theories like non-reductive physicalism, emergent dualism, pan-protopsychism, cosmopsychism, and diverse religious theories from Hindu, Buddhist, Taoist, Judaic, Christian, Islamic, and indigenous traditions, all with a similar degree of specificity and seriousness as for each of the many materialist or physicalist theories. Now, the anonymous peer reviewer, peer review is always anonymous, so there's complete honesty, while he or she was generously appreciative of the scientific theories, and by the way, offering very helpful suggestions, which I appreciated and acknowledged in the paper. The reviewer recommended dropping all the purely philosophical and certainly the theological theories because, he or she wrote, scientific journal readers would not much care about heavy-duty philosophy and certainly not care about really any theology at all. I responded to the journal and to the peer reviewer by agreeing that readers of this journal would likely not care, but that I surely did care. And because I was now going to do this landscape of consciousness once in my life, I'm not going to do it again in anything like this, I must make it as complete as I, in my idiosyncratic way, saw fit. And so, I mean, if I were the reviewer, I would say the same thing. I would not like or allow those other philosophical and theological theories in this journal. So if the journal, I wrote to them, did not want to publish it with all the theories, I would totally understand, and I'd try to seek another venue in some way. But to the credit of the journal, I'll give them credit, Progress in Biophysics and Molecular Biology, they agreed to publish it all, and nothing was cut. So now, after more than 6 decades of thinking about consciousness, hundreds of Closer to Truth interviews and discussions, and a consuming 175,000 words in a landscape of consciousness, what do I personally believe? Quite naturally, many viewers and readers ask me this question. They do it on Closer to Truth. Now, while the question is fair, I still do not like it. In my landscape review, I didn't even want to even offer, much less to defend my own view, because doing so might skew perceptions of the entire enterprise. I try to present each theory as accurately and persuasively as I could, usually with the words of its creator, without putting any of my own thoughts or critique or comments there. I want it as pure as possible to represent the theory in the best possible way. Moreover, in my own view right now doesn't much matter. It doesn't matter what I believe. However, I came to realize that some would continue to push for my own view, and that if I didn't say something, the fact that I was hiding it, my own not-so-veiled omission, could seem like a kind of hidden agenda. So I was kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. If I talked about what I believe, it might skew people's impression of the other theories, which I try to make as rigorous and as honest as possible. And if I didn't give my view, they would think I was hiding something. So I was caught. So what did I do? So right at the very end of A Landscape of Consciousness, right at the very end of this paper, 175,000 words, reluctantly, I put in this short paragraph. I'll read it to you verbatim. I said, I just don't know. My own hunch, right here, right now, if I'm forced to disclose it, and for what little it's worth, might be something of a dualism, idealism mashup. And then I said, I can describe what I believe, but I dare not try to defend it. Then I added this footnote, this is in the footnote. Second place might go to some form of quantum consciousness, which was triggered by writing this paper and actually surprised me because prior to writing this paper, I didn't take quantum consciousness all that seriously. Third place, now this is counterintuitive compared to the other thing I'm saying, is a kind of eliminative materialism and illusionism combined with neurobiological and representational theories. Now, I know you weren't counting, but those were 39 words in the text and 33 words in the footnote. That's 72 words altogether. out of about 175,000. So that about expresses that ratio. I've come to love the confusion. I luxuriate in it. And I do so only because I love consciousness and I recognize its importance. And it's because I do not want to limit its meaning or mechanism too soon. This video is an overview introduction to the paper, A Landscape of Consciousness. Now, I've only mentioned the 10 major categories. I have not discussed any of them at all, nor have I even mentioned the individual theories, and there are over 200 of them, as I've said. If you'd like to see more of these videos discussing the landscape of consciousness, including the major categories of theories, specific theories in some depth, please let us know. Finally, I would like to make this point, as we've witnessed on Closer to Truth. It's the same I've seen with this the whole approach to consciousness and the paper, A Landscape of Consciousness. We've been gratified on Closer to Truth and with this paper that a passion for these big questions for consciousness can bring together people from different nations, regions, religions, races, ethnicities, genders, educational levels, income levels. And the reason is that all human beings, we are all united by ultimate questions. Viewers can watch over 1,000 Closer to Truth videos, dozens of TV episodes on consciousness on the Closer to Truth website and the Closer to Truth YouTube channel. We deal with all facets of consciousness, the mystery of consciousness, brain function, free will, personal identity, creativity, panpsychism, dualism, idealism. These are aspects from the paper. Parapsychology, souls, spirits, life after death, cosmic consciousness, all infused with critical thinking. That's Closer to Truth. That's A Landscape of Consciousness. Thank you for watching. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please like and comment below. You can support Closer to Truth by subscribing. Closer to Truth is now accepting your tax-exempt donations. Please come to closertotruth.com/donate. Thank you very much for supporting us, and thanks for watching.